Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I'm so excited to paint with you today for another day in our watercolor journals. We're going to do today another kind of loose atmospheric wildflower piece, I think. I'm feeling very floral. So that's what we're going to do today. I am working in a 6x9 Bao watercolor sketchbook. This is 100% cotton, 140 pound cold press paper. Has a nice little tooth to it. I'm using my Core watercolor paints, so QOR by Golden. Here is my full palette. A list of all the colors that are in this palette is in the description. And then I'll go through colors as I use them for this particular video. And then I'm using my silver black velvet brushes today. I'm using a size 12 and a size 8. So link in the description for all supplies and materials that I'm using here today, as well as other supplies that I use on a regular basis. All right, so let's get started. So I want to create like a nice kind of glowy atmospheric effect that is darker around the edges, lighter towards the center, and then we're going to have lots of little wildflowers coming up from that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out green gold. I really love this color, and it took me a really long time to appreciate it. And I'm going to start on the edges. So just lots of water and paint in my brush, and kind of on the edges in a circular-ish pattern. Rinsing my brush out, getting lighter and lighter and lighter towards the middle. Work my way over to this corner. And basically we're creating a nice damp surface in addition to putting down our first layer of color. I'm putting down lots of water with my paint. So now we can do a nice wet on wet bit as well. So lots of green gold. We'll add a little more pure green gold to the edges here. And then I'm also going to add some sap green while everything is wet. And you can see I'm just kind of scrubbing it in on the edges. I'm not being super careful. I want it to flow out. Core paint moves really, really well and really fast. You can see these little fingers kind of just reaching up into the sky. That's great. That's what I want. I'm going to even encourage them further by just flicking my brush up. And you can already see this kind of has a woodland feel to it. Like this could be a tree. These could be long grasses. That's what I want. Here is some sap green mixed with Payne's gray that I already had in my palette. So sap green and Payne's gray. I'm just going to throw a little bit of that down here as well. Maybe even a little bit more. And again, core paint travels. Look at that. Travels so, so well. Not all paints are going to travel the same. Some of them you might have to help a little bit. But it's just one of the qualities of this particular paint. And also I have a lot in these silver black velvet brushes. They hold a lot of paint and a lot of water, which makes this easier, this process of wet on wet easier as well. All right, so that's our background. This is looking really good. I feel really great. It's created kind of multiple layers in here. I feel really bright and glowing in the center. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and put on some layers of wildflowers. All right, we're back and everything is dry now, and we've got this beautiful glowing backdrop, and I am going to paint in some wild poppies or poppy-esque flowers, and I'm going to use some reds and yellows, which I think are going to look really great on this background. I'm just looking for a paper towel to clean off one of these sections so I can use it for my red. So I'm going to use, I have this beautiful permanent Scarlet color, which is a red with lots of kind of yellow undertones. And also my Diarylide yellow here, which gives off an orangey vibe. It's very orange because I let it mix with the red. Okay. But on its own, it's much more yellow. Actually, should I pop in some cadmium yellow maybe? Maybe I'll do that as well into a few areas. So cadmium yellow. And we're gonna get started. And so basically I'm gonna scatter just some, poppy shaped flowers throughout here. I'm just gonna do the heads and little buds. So it's a fluttery, so this is the bottom. It's kind of a fluttery petaled flower. Give it a back petal here. I'm going to put a center in a moment. All right, there's one, and we're going to put in stems in a minute. And I'm going to do one this way where we're not going to see like any of the inside of it really. Drop in a little yellow. Let's do another one over here. A little triad going on. And I'm also going to do some little buds. Let me make this lighter. Do one here. We're going to see a little of the inside of this one. So I'm just kind of bopping around this composition here. And let's leave it at this. Let me do a few little very light kind of buds there. Okay, so let's add in some stems while that is drying. I'm going to actually add in a little bit of drops of color while these are still wet into a few spots. Beautiful. You could even do fully yellow poppies as well, or flowers. Let's make that one a little more yellow. And I'm going to throw a little yellow in here. Okay, that's good. We can always add more later. So let me pull out my sap green with some Payne's gray. Nice dark sap green. Now I'm actually going to switch my brush and I'm going to use a liner brush. Let's see if I have one over here. So this is a liner or a rigger, a script liner. And when we get it wet and full of paint, it's got these really long bristles at the top. So the bristles go from here to here. They're really thin, but it makes it easier to make so I want to make very thin stems that have movement to them, that have a little bit of a feel of movement and dance to them. And I want this to feel very fantastical. I'm not going to bring all the stems all the way to the bottom. Some are just going to kind of fade out into the grass here. Some can come from the bottom. And then we're going to put lots of leaves in soon as well to kind of fill this out. And just connect all these big blossoms somewhere to something. I'm going to go this way, go down. And then one more up here. All right, so now that we have all those thin little stems in there, I'm going to switch back to my larger brush and we're going to fill in some of the other gaps. So I'm going to pick some of that green gold color and I'm going to start to paint in some little buds or leaves in the lighter areas. I want them to also feel like they're glowing a little bit. So that's why I'm going to stick with that lighter color for a few, especially in this upper echelon up here where the light seems the brightest. And I know things are feeling a little disconnected right now. We're going to get that. We're going to fill in this front part here with lots of little details. I'm actually going to take some of this Payne's gray and sap green and go along the bottom. Basically put our front layer on here. This is where some of these stems are going to disappear into. Now, if I get too crazy here, you can see I've touched this one, it's going to start to bleed out. I'm okay with that one, but I don't want to do that to all of these other flowers. So, but touching the edges of some, giving them some slightly blurry edges. I'm actually going to play with it a little bit because I didn't let everything dry. So I'm just going through with a wet brush with I'm wiping it off I'm dipping it in the water, wiping it off on the paper towel. I'm just kind of working my way across here. I'm going to stop. And I'm just adding water, and you can see I'm picking up little edges. I don't know if this is going to make me happy in the long run or I'm going to be disappointed. But that's why we practice in our sketchbooks. All right, I'm feeling okay about it. I'm losing a little bit of the brightness of the glow by the little colors I'm picking up, but I do like these softer edges that I'm getting. All right, I'm going to stop messing with it. I'm going to let this kind of stand on its own and start to continue to build some more grasses and depth around it by adding on like a foreground here. Using the tip of my brush. Trying to decide if I should put in something else, some other elements, some browns, but I think I'm just going to stick with this. And in a moment, I'm going to get to a point where I really do need to let things dry a little bit. And then we can put in some centers on our flowers and add some more additional details with our little brush here. I kind of love this, even though it was a mistake originally. Sometimes we have to lean into our mistakes and they can show us that they really weren't mistakes after all. I'm going to put in a few more leaves over here while this is still wet and let them get all fuzzy and bleed out. Okay, I'm going to let everything dry again and then put on some final details in probably a last layer. All right, we're back and everything is dry. I'm going to start with some Payne's Gray on my size 8 brush. And I'm just going to pop in some little centers in here. And a little more water and a little more paint in my brush, I think. There we go. There we go, and then some in this one, but most of them you can't see center. So I'm just stippling in like a rough center. Oh, and this one wasn't even fully dry over here, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to rinse that off. I'm going to pick up some more of my red. Make sure your brush is rinsed off really well. I'm going to add a little bit darker color towards the front, giving some distinction in a few petals. So just adding a little something else to each of the flowers that's already out there. Add a little more yellow. Give this like a little orangier hint. All right, and this one down front I think needs a little something too. I'm gonna go a little more orange and red. There we go. All right, so let's also put in just a few more leaves and branches. I'm gonna make some long, like I was saying before in the beginning, like I want to give a feeling of movement, but also a little bit of a feeling of like a little magical and fantastical. While at the same time being like this nice little intimate setting of flowers, like cloistered in this beautiful sunny spot in the forest somewhere. And I love how you're still getting this really beautiful glowing effect. I am going to darken this corner up here a little bit. I'm going to pick up some of that green gold again. And now I'm going to have to really rinse my brush off. I'm going to come here with clean water and kind of push up to that spot. So clean brush, clean water. I'm letting it touch some of the edges of the leaves like I did before. Letting them get a little runny and fuzzy. Just because you don't have to do this. All right, I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to let all of that dry, and we're going to do one more round. I want to put some detailed, some darker leaves up here on top of these fuzzy ones. All right, last layer, sap green, Payne's gray. And that is not dry there, but that's okay. This part is up here. So make sure to let everything dry. But I can definitely see there's a few spots that still weren't dry down here. All right, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Take what I've learned, like let things dry. Otherwise you get these funky little areas that you don't want necessarily if you're not trying to create a fuzzy layer, and you don't want it to be wet, you want it to stay in place. All right, so those are our magical little forest poppies. Thank you for joining me. I'm Sienna Cerulean. Don't forget to check out the description for links to all the supplies and materials that I use on a regular basis, including the ones that are used here in this video. Don't forget to leave a comment if you would like. I love to see your comments. And share this with a friend, as well as come back next time for our next watercolor journal page. Thanks for joining me all. Take care.